Hello, everyone. This is the Gridiron Review. I'm Zach, that's Jack, and we are excited to be here as part of your NFL offseason coverage. We are going to be discussing our mock draft 3.0 in this episode, specifically the changes and maybe surprising picks, as well as the few trades that we have in this latest version. I just want to start off by saying, as we said in the last one, the trades are going to be hard to project in this draft because there's not a ton of players that you can see your team trading up for. The quarterback talent is, high risk, high reward, for lack of a, better term. And, right off the bat, the Jaguars, we have taking Hutchinson again because their moves signal that that's probably the position they'll go. And they probably want to trade out in an ideal scenario, but we don't see a team, trading up for Hutchinson or any of the defensive players, especially at one. And we don't see just any trade package for any team that might want a quarterback at one even. No trade package is going to be worth trading out. So we think the Jaguars just sit tight and take Hutchinson, who we do like, but is also one of the weaker number one overall picks in recent memory. But our mock starts at pick 2, and our biggest change in probably our mock total is we have Jordan Davis going 2 to the Lions. He is the best run defender in the class. He's a massive human being, but an insane athlete. Anyone that watched the Combine knows this. And if anything else that the Combine proved, he's high character. He stayed to watch his teammates in the linebackers drills, and he just is everything you would want on your franchise. The Lions have been mocked to taking Malik Willis. We don't buy it. We think they're not ready for a quarterback yet, and they probably let Goff have another shot at it, or they also go out and get someone like Baker and have them to compete. So we think that the Lions just continue to build a strong team so that if they feel like they need to take a rookie, the rookie can be put into the best situation possible and break the chain of miserableness that has been Detroit. And Davis, again, is a great run blocker, but his tape shows a wicked first step that suggests, along with his athletic testing and his interviews about wanting to be a better pass rusher, that this could be a once-in-a-generation prospect at the tackle. A guy his size, double-digit sacks, seems realistic if he develops, as well as being a top run defender in the league. And to be honest, with his skill set, his testing, there's no reason to think he's not the best defensive lineman in this draft. But just because he's a tackle and his pass rushing and usage at Georgia wasn't ideal, he's going to not be viewed as such. But assuming he can adjust to playing more, I think he's got a real shot to be the best player in this draft. Jack?
I think it's really interesting that you look at the NFC North as a team who in recent memory has had receivers like Megatron and A-Rob and Cooks, Jordy Nelson, and all these guys, and you think this is a pass-heavy division. And you look at it now, you lose A-Rob, you lose Marcus Valdes-Scantling, you lose Devontae Adams, and the Vikings bring in Kevin O'Connell, who likes to run his play action. He likes to run his jets. And the NFC North could go from one of the pass-heavy divisions to one of the run-heavy. So Davis steps in right away, and if that's the way that this division is going, he's going to fit in perfectly for the Lions there, who, quite frankly, have one of the weaker D-line groups in the league. And I was talking to Zach about this earlier in the week, is Jordan Davis played for a very high-energy coach in Kirby Smart at Georgia. So for him to get into the league under the same type of head coach that Dan Campbell is, it's almost like not losing a beat. And again, if Jordan Davis can develop, this could end up being a better pick than Hutchinson at 1, especially for the value at 2. Moving down the line to pick 3, last mock we had the Houston Texans taking Kyle Hamilton, and we just think that now that you're committed to Davis Mills, you finally get rid of Deshaun Watson, you gotta commit to Davis Mills now. And the truth of the matter is, this team is not going to be all that far off from what it was last year. So is a guy like Kyle Hamilton really going to turn the defense entirely around? Is a guy like Trayvon Walker really going to turn the defense around? So we think they take Ike Ekwonu. He'll probably step in and play right tackle on the the bookend to Laramie Tunsil. And if Aquanu doesn't work out at tackle, he can kick in the guard, which is where I think he'll fit in better anyways. Pick 4, the Jets, Evan Neal. They signed 2 new tight ends. They re-signed Tevin Coleman. You just got to protect your young guy. Zach Wilson showed a lot of promise down the stretch, so continue to build around him, and the defense will come later. I mean, Robert Saleh is a great defensive coordinator. He'll figure it out. And Zach, you want to start with the Giants pick?
Yeah, so we had this in the last mock, and the more we talk about it, the more it makes sense to us that, first of all, the Malik Willis pick will be a dark horse team. The Giants, we think, are going to sit tight and pick, but there also is a chance that they reach an agreement to trade out with someone. It's hard to think who could come up this far. A lot of the teams, Pittsburgh and the Saints even, are pretty far away to make this big of a jump up to take Willis. So as it stands right now, we are trying to read the tea leaves, the Dable hire and how he worked with Josh Allen, the fact that Willis has similar problems coming out of college, or concerns rather, that Allen had with missing mechanics, but all the talent in the world, and the fact that they signed Tyrod. And I know it's a 2-year deal, and we've been reading that it could be because they plan on Tyrod being the backup for the rookie next year. My argument is, even if next year's quarterback class is better, which isn't a given. I mean, we went through it, a lot of the quarterbacks next year are former top recruits who had pretty bad years this year. And, guys like CJ Stroud, who has only done it for 1 year, I believe. And, we think that Willis's upside will be ahead of anyone's next year. His running ability, no quarterback, unless someone comes out of nowhere, is going to be able to top in the draft class next year. So the Giants just take the guy that's there, and they allow Jones to start for the year while Tyrod mentors both of them. And they get, a guy that has potential to throw a ball 70 yards and run a ball 70 yards. Jack, you have anything to add to that?
No, we're good.
Moving right along, the Panthers take Kenny Pickett. This isn't changed. Carolina still hasn't added anything to their quarterback room in free agency. There's no way they roll with Darnold. I can't believe someone on a hot seat like Rule would do such a thing. The rumors that Cam is going to come back is ridiculous. If it happens, then Carolina, everybody should be fired. GM should be fired. And Pickett is the most pro-ready. He can go and compete right away. Again, Carolina could do something else, like go trade a day 2 or day 3 pick for Baker, or even take on a pick for Baker and just have them fight it out. But as it stands right now, until they make a separate move, we think that they're eyeing up Kenny Pickett. And then keeping on the Giants pick again. This is, again, a spot where the rumors that they might want to trade out for financial concerns or just to have a pick next year could come into play. But as we stated in the beginning, it's hard trying to find a trade that would make sense with other teams. But Jack, you can take it away here.
Yeah, so we think it's Sauce Gardner because based on everything we're reading, it sounds like Bradbury is going to get dumped whether they get compensation or not. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if the new regime just doesn't like him. They don't like his contract. It's hard to say, but Bradbury didn't play terribly in his time in New York, so it's kind of surprising, especially with Martindale and his philosophy in believing that you need to go after corners first and you'll find someone who wants to hit the quarterback. But assuming they get rid of Bradbury to whoever for whatever, Sauce comes in, doesn't have any injury concerns like Stingley. He's a man-to-man corner, and he'll fit real nicely into Martindale's system. And moving down the line here, this is our first projected trade. And we have the Eagles coming up from pick 16 to 8 with the Atlanta Falcons. And we have them taking quarterback Sam Howell. For anyone who's followed our content, Howell is our quarterback 1 this year. We think that he's kind of at the same level at Pickett in terms of being ready to play, but also has some more upside than Pickett does. And, I mean, I didn't look at the quarterbacks as much, so I'll send it to Zach. But in terms of the deal, we think that the Eagles get 8 and maybe the cap dump of Deion Jones to compete with whoever they end up bringing up into the room, and maybe a later round pick. And the Eagles send Hurts, pick 16, and maybe a later round pick. But I'll have Zach take this one away.
Yeah, so if anybody pays attention knows that the quarterback rankings are all over the place this year. Some people have Willis as number 1, some people have him as 4, some people probably even have him as 5, and everyone is all over the place. This isn't one of those traditional years where there's, elite talent. And Sam Howell, to me, has a pretty good arm, and I think he's got a consistent release. He throws a really good deep ball, and he's got high upside mobility that is on the same level, in my opinion, as it Hurts. Maybe Hurts is a little bit faster, but Howell's a really good runner. He's smart. He's tough to bring down, and he's going to be able to run the offense that the Eagles run more effectively as a thrower. One thing we cannot ignore, and the thing that we keep coming back to, is that Howell is the first one they met with, reportedly, at the Combine. They interviewed him first. It was the thing that came out about shooting the basketballs on the mini hoop. And it was a throwaway joke, and Hal said, I'm probably not going to be on their team because I only need 2. But it's still worth noting. It seems to have gotten forgotten a little bit. And the Eagles, as noted by Jack, I believe, on this, were right in the middle of the Watson sweepstakes. They sent down a private investigator to see what was going on. And it came out, at least from what we've seen, that the only reason it didn't happen is because Watson didn't want to supplant Hurts because they share a trainer, which is weak, but whatever. So that means the Eagles aren't happy, and I think they've been very adamant about that, while also not throwing Hurts under the bus. But by trading Hurts in this, they don't sacrifice too much. They only have to give up one of their picks, and you don't have a controversy. You allow Minshew to start for as long as needed, because while Howell is really close to being ready, in our opinion, he could still probably work on stuff. There's no need to throw him out there prematurely. And the second thing about this is the Eagles are getting in front of Seattle, who is probably looking at Howell, it may be in our eyes, as similar to Russell Wilson. I wouldn't say that Howell was going to be that good because it's truly unknown. I mean, he could be, but this is not a traditional quarterback class where you've got, 3+ guys that are guaranteed top 5 picks. So I think the upside of a Russell Wilson type mold is there. But either way, Philly probably is worried about Seattle here, so they jump ahead and take them. And then Seattle, we don't think there's any quarterbacks here worth taking. And we're not so sure they're not going to just roll with Locke and sign another veteran. But Jack, you want to go with who they're going to take here?
Yeah, we have Seattle taking Charles Cross, and in the last mock, we had them taking a reach pick because that's kind of just what they're known to do. But we were talking at this pick, and we were like, oh, well, wouldn't it be kind of messed up if Seattle was like, oh, well, we got rid of Russell Wilson and we brought in a young guy. Let's go fix the line now, after Russell Wilson asking for ages now to have the line fixed. And Cross is our second rated just like straight tackle, not like a hybrid lineman. And he could probably play left or right. Most likely it's going to be the left, with Dwayne Brown still not being re-signed. And it's probably better than any tackle Drew Lock's played in his career with. So it's a good start, but obviously I know that Quandre Diggs and a bunch of other guys are saying that they're not in rebuild mode, but they're clearly in rebuild mode. And if you got to roll with Locke this year, at least protect him, because it's not fair to him.
Yeah, plus you get a chance for the rookie lineman to iron out any issues in case it's not Locke, so that you don't have to deal with a rookie lineman having growth issues. Yeah, growth concerns.
Moving down the line here, the Jets take Stingley. We know that they signed DJ Reed. However, that really doesn't fix the secondary. I don't have an issue with Bryce Hall, but for Brandon Echols to still be your 3 is a little concerning. Stingley has the injury concerns, but if he can stay healthy, he fills in as your 1 with Reed as your 2, Hall as your 3, or however you want to look at it. And you just got to remember that the Jets sit in the AFC, where this is an arms race. Everyone is gearing up for the war of the ages in the AFC. So the Jets they protect Zach Wilson at 4, and then they load up the defense here at 10. Moving down the line, the Commanders take Drake London. This pick is the same. We just think that Wentz has had his fair share of issues as a passer. We don't think it's as bad as people say, but Wentz also hasn't had a lot of weapons in his career. He automatically right now steps into Washington with McLaurin probably being the best receiver of his career so far. And with London's frame, if Wentz does lose a ball here or there, we think that London is the guy who's going to be able to go make a play on the ball if it's not directly in the breadbasket. Zach, you want to add to that or not?
Yeah, I just wanted to say we have London still here because he was unable to participate in USC's Pro Day. He will be having his own private Pro Day in April, and if the testing is bad, that'll probably, affect our rankings. But as it stands right now, we're assuming he's a full go. He's got decent athleticism, size, and everything, so he's everything Wentz could use. And a pair with McLaurin, I mean, that would be great. And it would not only be the best wide receiver, you drop London in here, that's the best two receivers he's ever had, I would argue.
And you had Curtis Samuel, and that's the receiving core right there.
Yeah.
Moving down the line at 12, we had the Vikings taking Kyle Hamilton. All week we've been looking at mocks where Hamilton is starting to drop, and we were sitting wondering, like, this is kind of weird. How is our number one prospect just not being picked in the top 10? And although every team we've covered so far could take Hamilton, we just think that there's a bigger need. Like, safety is an important position in the secondary, but is it more important than protecting your young quarterback or anything like that? And we think that's why he slides. But we think that Minnesota takes him here despite having slight weakness at the guard position or needing a D tackle or something like that, just because we think that Hamilton has the similar versatility to Harrison Smith. And if he can learn under Smith until he retires, that would be such a great thing for Hamilton, who already seems pro ready. So if he can learn the leadership and the pro style versatility and how the Vikings like to run their system defensively, it would just be such a huge help to Hamilton. It probably creates one of the best 1-2 safety tandems in the league. Zach, anything to add there?
No, that Hamilton is going to be one of the bigger steals in this draft if he does fall. And as you mentioned, pretty much any team in the top 10 could take him. It's just quarterbacks and protecting the Zach Wilsons of the world are going to take precedent over a safety because that's just how the NFL works. And then at 13, the Texans, we have taking with the Cleveland Browns pick, as we covered that trade already, George Karlaftis. As we talked about in our previous mocks, the Texans are weak all over the board. And for me, I look at Karlaftis and I see the lack of stats at college. I think he had 4.5 sacks last year. But anyone that looks at the tape sees that he is double teamed and triple teamed so many times, whereas most of these other guys are left one-on-one. Hutchinson was left one-on-one a lot of the time. And I know he ended up with, I think, like 14 sacks, but rarely did you see him double teamed by two linemen. I'm not talking about like a chip by a tight end. It always just seemed to me like Karlaftis, that was just his thing. He ate up two of the blockers, and he still won sometimes. And I saw when he was left one-on-one or when he was put on the edge, he had a quick step that he beat most of the time the tackles that he was up against. He can play all three parts on the line, so you can really, if you're Houston, use him wherever you need him. He can stand up, he can put his hand in the dirt, and he can play inside. So I think he's the perfect mix of potential safeness, because I think Houston can't be whiffing on these picks, and also versatility that they desperately need. And then right after them, we have Baltimore taking Trayvon Walker. I think I saw a mock, maybe it was MJD, that even had him going 1. Physically, athletically, yeah, he's got the upside to do this. It's crazy how athletic he is. But for me, when I watch his tape, I see like so much rawness in his like technical side. He's got all the athletic ability in the world, but from a pure pass rusher standpoint, I just see so much that needs to be learned, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, the way I look at it, Trayvon Walker was what everyone thinks Thibodeau is, the athletic freak who just needs to develop, because Thibodeau to me is so far away, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But Walker, the Ravens were in on Zadarius Smith until the end. In fact, the report came out that he was going to sign with them, and either he backed out or it was a false report, but that means that the Ravens aren't satisfied. And they're willing to give a lot of money to Za'Darius. So instead, they stick here and they get a guy that can play. I imagine him playing either edge or even an off-the-ball linebacker that pass rushes occasionally. He's got that kind of athleticism. Jack watched the Georgia Pro Day, so he can talk about something he saw.
So Walker, it's interesting to note because at the Pro Day, they were talking about how Walker in college was listed as a defensive tackle. So first off, I mean, obviously he's on the small side for a defensive tackle, but if that's his listed position, that means that's what he worked on in college. So now you have him that he can work as a tackle, he can work as an end, he can work as a stand-up backer. And for Baltimore, that's such a huge thing because you look at what they did last year with Away, and you just I get they have Tyus Bowser, but the fact that they were in on Za'Darius, to Zach's point, means that they're either unsatisfied or they want a rotation. And if you can get another athletic freak like Away here at 14, that would be a steal for a team that's highly known for their defense and for a team who struggled to get pressure on when their secondary went down. So if you can get a guy like Walker, and let's say Humphrey and Peters go down again or whatever happens, at least you're going to be able to bring a little more pressure than you were last year where your secondary was just getting burnt every week. But in the Pro Day, it was interesting because Walker not only worked out with the D-line, he worked out with the linebackers, but the linebackers did defensive back type drills with the I don't know how to explain it, but like you backpedal and you flip your hips. It's the DB drills you see time in and time out at the combine. And Walker looked like one of the more fluid guys. It's just crazy that a guy at his size is out here doing DB drills and catching the ball. And it's like we did bring up Walker's name in for the Jaguars pick. However, aside from Hutchinson being probably more ready right now compared to upside, is the Jaguars kind of have their guy that does the Walker role in Josh Allen, who can drop, who can rush, the athletic freak when he came out. So it doesn't make sense in their given scheme to run with two of them. But this is just a Baltimore pick because Baltimore is known for their defense, and I think that they have a weakness to tackle with Villanueva retiring, and I mean, obviously the receivers aren't great, but in an offense where you run, it doesn't really matter. So, Zach, you want to add anything else before we move down?
Just until that Baltimore proves that they want to open up the game a little more, they're gonna lose anyway. But might as well take an edge here with a ton of upside.
Moving down the line here at 15, we have the Eagles taking Kenyan Green. So Green was a guy that I didn't get to look much at before the combine. So watching him go through the testing and the drills was the first look I got at him, and he was really, really disappointing. Very clearly a loser of the combine, and I really didn't want to watch his tape, I got to be honest. But when I did, I was really impressed, and I thought that he had top 10 talent. He played guard, he played tackle, and from what Zach told me, he did center drills at their pro day. So he's got 5-spot versatility. And I kind of forgot that the Eagles drafted Landon Dickerson last year to be the Kelsey replacement. So where we've had Linderbaum going to the Eagles to be the Kelsey replacement, maybe it's not. Maybe they do roll with Dickerson when Kelsey decides to retire. But Kenyan Green right now can step in and be the Brandon Brooks replacement at right guard. And honestly, I thought he looked a little bit better at tackle than he did at guard, but he should be able to take the Lane Johnson role when he retires if you really want him to. Zach?
I mean, you're the offensive line guy. I haven't really looked too much. I just know that the narrative has been that ignore the testing for Kenyan Green, that he's got the versatility and everything. And while a lot of people say that when they don't test well, this is one of those examples, it sounds like, where that's probably true. But rolling right along, the Atlanta Falcons are up with our projected trade with Philly earlier. They take the guy they probably would have taken if they stayed put in our eyes, and that's Chris Olave. Atlanta's wide receiver room is borderline worst of all time, I'm sure. I mean, they just have nothing there. Besides Kyle Pitts, we're not counting him.
Zacchaeus is their best receiver at the current moment.
Yeah, they have it's just a lot of undrafted and late round picks. I mean, they got to add, though you'll probably see them add multiple guys in this draft. And it's another reason why we don't have them going quarterback in the draft, because it would just be a disaster. So we have them taking our wide receiver one, Chris Olave. He's the best route runner in the draft, as we've covered, and he's got decent speed, well, pretty good speed. He can be open at any point because of his route running. And he's going to pair a really nice duo with Kyle Pitts and then whoever else they add throughout the draft, because this room needs a lot of work. And they're going to make the team ready for if it is Mariota or whoever is ready to take over, if it's Hurts in our projected trade. And then moving right along, the Chargers, we have taken Garrett Wilson. I'm not the biggest fan of his. I think he's one of the overrated prospects in this class. Everyone has him as wide receiver one. Not everyone. A lot of people have him as wide receiver 1 or 2. For me, he's got a lot of little red flags that start to add up. Look at the gauntlet drill where he was hopping. I know people say don't overreact to stuff, but those people are also the analysts that we've kind of thought may be pushing certain narratives. But what Wilson does well really will help the Chargers out in the bloodbath of the AFC West. Wilson is very quick. He's a good route runner, and he's super elite with the ball in his hands. Think of Curtis Samuel-esque, but better, or more upside at least. And, you know, you pair him with Keenan Allen, who's one of the best route runners and sure-handed guys in the league, and Mike Williams, who's massive. And you have 3 receivers that have 3 different complete skill sets, and then Josh Palmer is 4. And as Jack said when we talked about it before, Josh Palmer will become one of the better 4s in the league. And this team that has done so well balancing signing offense and defense this offseason completes their trifecta of wide receivers to compete, and I think would become, to me, between their defense and their offense, probably the division favorites. I don't know if that's too far, but also Wilson, I project, will have drop issues in the pros. The way he catches the ball in college isn't always the best. When he's tracking deep balls, he uses his forearms to catch the ball instead of his hands. He doesn't fully extend. And when he catches short passes, he uses his forearms and traps the ball. So having someone like Keenan Allen there to work on him and help him with that could unlock something that I think, like, he could be a top receiver in the league, I suppose. And for a side note, Dan Orlovsky comparing him to Julio is one of the most outrageous things I've ever seen. He's not that. He's nowhere close. And could Wilson be one of the better deep threats in the league? Sure. But he's got a lot to work on that people just seem to be overlooking. Do you have anything you want to add before we keep going on that?
I just want to add, well, first off, I think that with the recent releasing of Balaga, you could argue offensive tackle here, but I'm really not as high on Trevor Penning as the analysts and a lot of people are. I think that the physicality is clearly there. I just don't know that he will pan out the way that people hope he will. And in terms of Garrett Wilson, this is something Zach and I have talked about since the combine, is if you watched him catch the go routes at the combine, he just looked like he gave up. Like, if he was overthrown by a hair, he'd be like, nah, this ain't mine. I'll make the quarterback look bad. And it's like, you're there to show effort. You're there to show – and Wilson isn't the only player in this class that has shown effort concerns in their tape or their drills or whatever. And I don't know if you want to add to that or just move it.
No, I just think that's, again, there's a lot of little red flags that start to add up. And it's just, he's not everybody's, a lot of the analysts, the professional analysts saying he's wide receiver 1 just seem to be overlooking. I mean, but this happens all the time where the guy with the flashier tools is rated higher, and yet you have guys like Justin Jefferson, like Devontae Smith, and I know Devontae Smith was taking one, but he just had a ridiculous season that couldn't be ignored, where taking first in the class, where the route runners are overlooked. There's a reason why Keenan Allen and company, the best route runners in the league. Hunter Renfrow was a third-round pick. Cooper Kupp was a third-round pick as well.
Diggs was a late-round pick.
Yeah, like these guys that are elite route runners just get overlooked, and yet they're some of the best in the league. And these guys that are toolsy upside guys that their red flags are ignored don't always work out. So that's just kind of a lesson that I feel like the analysts just make this mistake every year, and maybe they're just fed the lines. I don't know. I'm starting to believe this year that they might be. One need to look no further than, this isn't a rant about this, but now that Matt Ryan's in Indy, suddenly they need to surround him with weapons. But there was no mention of that while they were dragging Carson Wentz through the mud. However, I digress. We're going to keep the momentum going. The Saints are up next, and we think this is going to be a major wide receiver run. They go with Jameson Williams. To me, Williams is similar. I think I compared him to Terry McLaurin. He's a very good route runner. Well, he's a good route runner. I wouldn't say he's super elite, or not on a lobbies level. He's very fast. He's coming off an injury, which is why he's falling. And I don't think he gives you a ton after the catch. Like, he can run by people, but I don't say he's, Garrett Wilson is definitely more elusive. But the Saints need speed, but they need effective speed. And drafting Jameson Williams in what is a super weak receiver room would give them two really good route runners, yet two good route runners that do completely different things with Michael Thomas. Williams can be the deep threat and Thomas can be slant boy. No, but Thomas has decent size, so you can really have a diverse offense with him out there. Do you want to talk about that?
I just want to add that in our last mock, we had the Saints trading up for surprise Sam Howell, like the Eagles did in this one. But with them re-signing Jameis on a 2-year deal, it just seems like the commitment is there to give Jameis another chance. And, the Saints haven't had a good wide receiver duo in who knows how long. And I think that Jameson Williams, when he's healthy, could end up being what they hoped Emmanuel Sanders was going to be a couple of years ago. And with Thomas being the bigger route runner on one side, Williams the speed guy on another, and most likely Deontay Harris in the slot or whoever, because you still got Callaway there. They'll figure it out, and it's just more weapons for Jameis to throw to, and instead of the defensive backs.
I agree. And at 19 is the Eagles. However, we have them having two first-round trades. Howie keeps his MO going as a master trade negotiator while being, an average drafter. Although we do like the Sam Howell pick. However, the Packers are probably sweating. Got to keep this safe so we don't have to mark it as explicit. They're probably sweating with all of this massive receiver run, considering all the heat they've taken. They got an extra first for the Devontae Adams trade. They're probably double dipping at wide receiver. So we think that they make a trade for Treylon Burks. They trade up with the Eagles. Now, the Eagles could use Burks, but Howie being Howie, he probably is genuine when he says he wants a first next year. Even though they got their quarterback, I believe him. I think that's probably where there's smoke, there's fire, which is the same way we're saying he takes Howell when there's a slight indication that this could be the case. So we think Green Bay overpays for this pick. They move up from all the way down at 28, and we think that they give up a first next year. Now, that being said, the Eagles probably offload the fan favorite Jalen Reagor, and I think it would be both Reagor and Dillard, because I think Green Bay is going to have to justify giving up their first next year. But if you are Green Bay, this is all or nothing. Like, you have to get Rodgers some weapons. And I just think that you can't keep this narrative going that he hasn't thrown to first-round receivers, so that at the very least, fans and analysts will shut up about it. And they go with Burks, who physically has probably the greatest upside of any receiver in the class. He's got decent size, although he measured smaller at the combine. His speed he ran a slow 40, but it's definitely long speed. So if you had another 20 yards, he may have ended up being the fastest guy. If there was a 60-yard dash, he could have been the fastest, and I wouldn't have been shocked. He's got decent run after the catch. He's super strong. He's got really good pass catching ability, especially high pointing catches. And he has, they kept talking about Debo at the combine so much it was nauseating, but he did run a similar role in college in what was an unimaginative offense, but he did take snaps out of the backfield, and he did run bubble screens and all this stuff. And for a guy his size, he can do it. So we think that, again, that Philly will get 28 and a first next year, and Green Bay gets this pick, maybe a mid-round pick, and Dillard/Rieger, one or both. And I mean, heck, you know what? Throw Arcega-Whiteside in there. Get them all gone if you really want to. Right the wrongs. And I know Philly needs the receiver, and we've been disappointed that they haven't signed one. But I don't think this is a bad trade. I don't think he's going to get, there's more wide receivers in this draft. It's a good trade for Philly to make. But, Jack, do you have anything to add before we keep going?
No,
all right, so Pittsburgh is next. They want Malik Willis. I don't know how they jump from 20. It's going to have to be like 5 or 4 for me for them to jump and get Willis. So I just don't think it happens. Much like we said multiple times, I think them going and getting Baker, or maybe they make a draft day trade in the second round or third round for Jordan Love. I think there's other moves that make more sense for Pittsburgh than trading up the farm to go get Willis. So instead, they stay put and they address that horrible run defense. Then anybody that needs to see examples of that, go watch the Viking game where Dalvin Cook had like 150 yards at halftime, it felt like. And they take Devontae Wyatt, who's the second best D tackle in our eyes, although he's got some positional flexibility. He's a nice blend of run defense and pass rush upside. And he's another Georgia guy that it seems like high character, a Pittsburgh guy on defense. Jack, you want to discuss that a little bit more?
Start with that is the character. He was the guy who stuck with Jordan Davis to watch the Georgia linebackers at the combine. That's just Pittsburgh. But Tuitt hasn't committed to coming back yet. I know they want him back. He has not committed to it. And to Zach's point, they were the 32nd ranked run defense. So clearly something needs to happen there. And you bring in Miles Jack. So clearly they're committed to stopping the run in a division that has Lamar Jackson, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Joe Mixon. Devontae Wyatt may not be the best pass rushing D lineman in this class, but there's definitely the potential for it. And to work under a guy like Cam Hayward could be the best thing for him. Pittsburgh really hasn't seemed to address the corner spot, which we thought about here. But if we're assuming that this is going to be a run-heavy division still, even though it's a shootout AFC West, Wyatt is ready to go run or pass.
And he also has the athleticism to have pass rushing upside. So he tested – a lot of these defensive guys tested insane, and Wyatt was right there at the top of them.
Wyatt also was the 3-down guy at Georgia, so he was able to do it all. But moving down the line here, 21, we have New England taking Thibodeau, and we do believe that he could slide even a little further than this. However, New England is weak at the end spot, and Belichick seems to have a way with troubled players, guys like Jamie Collins who have effort concerns or whatever. And we just think that if anyone is going to make the most of him, it's going to be Belichick and his crew there. I mean, they brought Patricia back, so him and his Pentel got something ready to go for Thib. But Zach, you want to take over here?
Yeah, so we call Thibodeau a troubled player in that he's not – he doesn't seem like a bad person or like off-the-field concerns, but his interviews are, in our eyes, not good. Some people said that to take it one way, we took it a different way. he's got an overconfidence for a guy. I think it was his combine interview. He was saying how he's been talked about since high school and how he's used to the spotlight. Well, he didn't do anything special at Oregon. I think he topped out at 8 sacks a year. And if you look at the tape, a lot of those sacks come on, tight ends and running backs that are left one-on-one on him. He rarely, in my eyes, beat a tackle one-on-one. And for everybody, again, we talk about analysts pushing the narratives, and Thibodeau has been in the spotlight. He's been this revolutionary guy. He was, at one point, I think not compared to Garrett in that way, just in like hype as a prospect when he was a freshman and a sophomore. You heard his name all the time.
You heard his name in high school too.
Yeah,
He's back that far.
And he's just not, like, you look at the tape, he's not that good. Sure, he has physical upside, but so does every other edge in this class. He's the same size as David Ojabo, and I know he tore his Achilles, but people don't seem to realize that. And, combining that with a lack of pass rushing moves, with whatever happened at the combine where he just put on his sweats and said, I'm done, after telling all the people in interviews that he was going to do all the drills. Effort concerns on the tape, I mean, he just seems okay with accepting that he's being blocked, and he doesn't try to get around them half the time, maybe even more than that. He's got a lot more question marks. And again, the analysts may or may not be pushing narratives, but we saw one anonymous report that said that one exec called him one of the most overrated players in the draft. And I think he is. I think he's extremely overrated. I mean, to me, I would even say Jermaine Johnson is better than him, but New England probably takes a chance in hopes that they can unlock the next level. And I still don't even like this pick, though. Like, it just, to me, there's too many question marks with Thibodeau for a guy that people seem to think is this physical specimen that really is Trayvon Walker. I mean, Trayvon Walker is what people think Thibodeau is. We've mentioned that already. And I'm just going to keep moving along, and we'll go to Green Bay with their pick from the Raiders. We have taking George Pickens. And we think that anyone that's seen the movie Moneyball, you can't replace a player with a player. It usually doesn't work. Instead, you just look to replace his production. And in this case, you're replacing Adams' production with 2 players. And Pickens is an elite run blocker at the wide receiver position. So if they want to transition to even more of a rushing team, he fits right in. He's got good size at 6'3". He's got good speed. And he's similar sort of to Valdez-Scantling in the size-speed combo, except that Pickens, again, is an elite run blocker. Again, this is another Georgia guy, high character. And combining him and Burks and Lazard, you have one of the biggest wide receiver rooms in the league. So instead of worrying about route running, you're just going to bully corners. And I think that the Packers are going to have to find a way to get creative here. So now you give Rodgers 2 first-round weapons to go throw to, and if it doesn't work out, well, you have to live with that ugly contract you signed him to. But Jack, go ahead.
Zach talks about replacing players' production rather than replacing player, and I know to some Pickens doesn't have the numbers that you would expect from a first-round receiver. However, Pickens comes from running back and you're just never going to reach 1,000 yards at Georgia. It's not going to happen. However, for anyone who watches college football, whoever watched the playoffs this year, when Pickens came back from the ACL surgery, again, his stats might not be there, but he had a long, impactful catch in almost every game, in the Michigan game, in the Bama game. He was the guy that Stetson went to when he needed a big play, and Rodgers needs that type of guy who, I mean, Marquez Valdez-Scantling had some drop issues. St. Brown had drop issues. Rodgers had drop issues. So Pickens comes in with what seems to be sure hands and fills that role pretty nicely.
One thing I just want to add real quick is Pickens, to me, appeared to be one of the best at tracking the deep throw in the draft. So I think he'll pair really nicely with Rodgers in that way. But let's just keep moving along. Go ahead.
With the next pick, we have the Cardinals taking Jermaine Johnson. And this is a pick where we're just kind of like, what do you do with it? They still have J.J. Watt, but the injury history just continues to grow. They still have Marcus Golden aging. They restructured Devin Kennard, so they must like him. And they re-signed Dennis Gardeck, who I didn't know, but Zach told me had an 8-sack season 2 years ago. So maybe they plan on him starting, but I don't. I didn't do the scouting on the edges Zach did, but it sounds like Johnson has the versatility, and he showed that by working out with the linebackers at the combine that he can play all across the front, particularly in a 3-4. So Johnson, being a good run defender, could play with his hand in the dirt, first and second down, and when it comes to the pass, stand him up. But Zach, take it away.
No, you covered it. To me, Jermaine Johnson was the best run defender of any of the first round edges. He is very strong at holding the block and setting the edge. So I think Marcus Golden's a good pass rusher. J.J. Watt, when he's healthy, is J.J. Watt. Kennard and Gardeck, I think, are both pass rushing specialists, although Gardeck is also a special teamer, so it's kind of hard to see whether he's going to be a starter. But Johnson gives you something that this group is missing, and we wanted to say wide receiver, but it doesn't seem like it's here. I think they probably take a shot on a second rounder. Kind of surprised they didn't sign one, to be honest, but maybe they think Rondale Moore takes a bigger step. I'm not quite sure. We're gonna keep going though. The Cowboys and the Bills are the same picks as before. Jack, if you want to just touch on that real quick.
Dallas Cowboys shored up their front a little bit with Dante Fowler and re-signing Van Der Esch, and Anthony Brown is. We're gonna start with that. So Buffalo, they get Trey Davius White back. However, they lose Levi Wallace, so they have a nice 1-2 as it stands in Taron Johnson and White. However, you need a 3 in the arms race of the AFC, and we're going to keep saying this, is you need to load up the secondary. I don't quite know where these people from NFL Network are finding Trent McDuffie in man coverage, because when I watch his tape, I could only find him playing zone or like 90% zone. So if Buffalo wants to continue to play soft zone against the Chiefs, at least you have a guy that can do it at a fairly good level. And I mean, if he's clearly seems to have the physical traits to learn man, so White isn't a bad guy to learn under either. Moving along here, Titans, same as last time, Travis Jones. Their starting nose tackle is Taylor Tart, who neither of us have heard of. So Travis Jones seems to be a fringe first, second rounder. We just think you can't ignore it when you play Jonathan Taylor twice a year. So moving along here, Tampa Bay, we have finally stopping the slide of what we consider the best interior offensive lineman, just straight interior offensive lineman this year in Linderbaum. And we know that they signed Ryan Jensen to a 3-year, $39 million deal, but someone clearly needs to fill the left guard spot left by Ali Marpet. And whether you want to kick Jensen or Linderbaum to guard, I'm sure either one can do it at a high level. And Zach, anything to add there, or just keep going?
No, I think that this is just somewhat of a luxury pick with Brady coming back. I guess there's an outside shot. It's a receiver, but they signed, I think, Richie James, right? Not Richie James, Russell Gage. And they re-signed Perryman, so maybe not. Maybe it's an outside shot receiver, but I do think they need to shore up the line first and foremost. I mean, your quarterback is 45, or you got to make sure he's not going to get hit a ton.
Yeah. 28, this is the Eagles pick now with the projected trade with the Packers. We had them taking Dax Hill, probably my favorite player, or one of my favorites in this class. The Eagles re-signed Anthony Harris, so that's one safety. You're still missing something, and you're also still missing a corner. So Dax just seems to do everything right. He's a good tackler, extremely influential when it comes to blitzing. He doesn't play the deep zone often from what I saw, but with his speed certainly has the capability to do so. He seemed more of like a nickel player, and I get that that's what Maddox does, but if you're going to continue to refuse to sign a corner, I mean, Maddox is paid, so you might as well kick him to outside and see how it works. If I'm an Eagles fan, I'm not comfortable with that, but I would be comfortable with Dax Hill taking the nickel spot because I think that he'll play it at a higher level than um, Maddox does. But anything to add, Zach?
Now, I think this is another pick that could be a wide receiver, but I don't know. Philly seems, they could have signed a free agent. We think they could be in the trade market for a receiver. So I'm not sure. I think Dax Hill is the value here. He's a much better, just like the Jermaine Johnson pick. His abilities are much better than the next receiver. So
Moving down the line here, this one I'm gonna go a little bit more in depth on. This is the Kansas City pick from Miami and the Tyreek Hill trade, originally from San Fran. We have them taking Devin Lloyd. Uh, we look at the Kansas City depth chart, and the biggest issue we saw is that Chris Jones who's an all-pro defensive tackle, is listed as their defensive end. And I guess on early downs, it's not horrible, but I'm sure you would love to have him back inside on passing down. So in Spagnuolo's 4-3, we think that either Gay or Bolton get kicked to the mic, and Lloyd takes over the sandbacker where he can play on the line, he can play back. My issue with Lloyd is that on tape, it looks like he has effort concerns. I watched the first Oregon game, and he just didn't look like he was there. And then in the second Oregon game, he was there in the beginning, and then when they started taking the league, he started to fall off again. Maybe that's just me seeing that, but anything is possible. And Kansas City, particularly Andy Reid, has a history of taking chances on players like that. So if they're going to get the most out of him, I'm sure Andy Reid can figure it out. But I also found out that Lloyd didn't participate in his pro day, or not a lot, because they have a hamstring tightness. So, I mean, that doesn't really help his case. That's kind of like a Thibodeau thing where, like, yeah, I'm going to compete, and then puts his sweatpants on and calls it a day. But Lloyd also apparently played safety in high school. So I think that could explain why he looks like the best coverage linebacker in this year's class and isn't as strong in the box. So maybe I go back and relook at it and see if I can see it in a different light. But I do think that Lloyd can take on a Parsons type role if he develops, where he can play off ball and he can play on the line. So he could be the guy that plays off the edge on third downs and lets Chris Jones rush from the inside. But Zach, you have anything you want to add here?
no, just that it would give them a young trio of linebackers that could be one of the better ones in the league if they all develop. But that's all I have. Next, we have our final trade of the draft. We have Seattle trading with Kansas City, since they had back-to-back picks now. And we have Seattle taking Desmond Ridder. We think that Seattle, they pass on Ridder at 9 because it's just a little too early. And while, late first-round quarterbacks don't always work out, Ridder has a lot of good qualities that override any physical concerns. He seems like a very good leader, very smart person, and not a guy, a high character that you can, throw in there and let him sit for a year behind Locke. If Locke ends up doing well, then you have a trade piece. And we think that Seattle tries to jump Detroit just in case. I don't think Detroit takes a quarterback, but I could see them worrying about it. We think that the trade actually involves Tyler Lockett, and that Kansas City, who probably would have looked to take a receiver here, replaces Tyreek Hill with Lockett. And again, you don't replace player with a player because they're not the same, but Lockett offers, I would say, better hands, probably better route running, but not as good speed. So he's not like the matchup nightmare that Tyreek Hill is, but he's also a very reliable receiver. I mean, he's been doing it for years. He doesn't seem to ever be really hurt, although I might be forgetting. And it can be really dependable and fill that void that will be there because Michael Hardman is not it. You want to comment on it, Jack?
Yeah. First off, I know that they lost Tyreek Hill, but they still are in the lead for something. They have the receiver room with the longest last names in the league. Um, but everyone has the Chiefs taking back-to-back receivers here, and it just doesn't make sense. Like we predict a Tyler Lockett trade, which to us makes a whole lot of sense. Especially with Seattle going into rebuild, do you really want a 30-year-old Lockett in the room? And I get that it's a veteran presence, but DK's been there long enough where maybe he can take a leadership role. And we had an early run on receivers. So is anyone really the value here? I mean, if you really want a Tyreek-esque player, Sky Moore in the second round, Calvin Austin in the second or third round. There's a bunch of guys that can take on this role. And the truth of the matter is Juju, MVS, Hardman, and if Josh Gordon doesn't get suspended for weeds, which it can't even anymore, if he can keep himself on the field, if you add Lockett to that room, there's no reason that receiving room can't be good. The truth of the matter is it is Mahomes, so you can never be counted out. He doesn't need the greatest receivers, and at the end of the day, he still has Kelsey. So I don't know what the real panic is here for. You just paid Juju around 11 million, I think it was. You gave MVS 10 million a year, so clearly you have some faith in these guys that you're trying to bring in. So I just don't think it's worth the panic when you have other needs on the team. Anything to add there? No.
No, no.
Moving along, 31, we have Cincinnati taking Andrew Booth. So, yes, anyone who's followed our content, we said that the Cincinnati Bengals should be drafting all linemen. And I think they've done a really nice job of patching up the line. Jonah Williams is still going to be their left tackle. I don't think that he was the issue. They brought in Ted Karras. They brought in Alex Kappa. They brought in Lyle Collins. The only one that's still on the line from last year with question marks is Jackson Carman. And I don't think that there's an interior offensive lineman that goes here that makes a whole lot of sense. And they got rid of Trey Wayne. So right now your starters are Awuzie, who didn't play bad last year, but your other one is Eli Apple, and that hurts my eyes to see. And I'm not the biggest fan of Boost tape. I have him as my cornerback 5. However, when you watch his highlight tapes, the athleticism that this kid shows is kind of ridiculous. And I don't know what Cincinnati's DB coach is like, but if they can unlock Booth's potential, then yeah, he could be one of the better corners that come out. But I think they take a swing on upside at the corner rather than take a reach pick on the O line. I think that can come in the second, third round, and maybe someone later on. And then moving on to our last pick, we have the Lions take Christian Watson. Jared Goff, in my opinion, looked really nice down the stretch. I don't think that there's any need to panic if you're Detroit. I get that his contract is big, but at the end of the day, with all the quarterback movement this offseason, I really don't know where you're going to send Goff to. I think you just roll with Goff. And like we said earlier, we think that Campbell is sitting here just trying to build the best team imaginable. That way, when it's time to drop a quarterback in, the team is ready to go. And somehow he managed to talk DJ Chark into coming to Detroit on a 1-year, $10 million deal. So you just build up the receiver room with Watson and Chark on top of Amon Ra and some of the pieces they still have like Khalif Raymond. But Zach, this is you.
So I think that Watson reminds me. Now I haven't watched a ton of tape on him, but just based on his rise with the Senior Bowl, with the size, speed, he kind of reminds me of Claypool when he came out of Notre Dame. And I think Watson has that similar upside, and he can go and not be counted on immediately. I mean, he'll probably step in as a number 3, but he doesn't have to be. This, they signed DJ Chark, which was a great signing, and you can't forget that Chark is only on a 1-year deal. It's a prove-it deal, so they should have someone else in place because I think Chark will price himself out of Detroit if he stays healthy.
Um, just I want to throw in here that for the first mock of our series is that Nakobe Dean is not in the first round. And this doesn't seem to be a hot take anymore. It seems that Dean is falling on nearly everyone's board, and it's in part why, although Dean screams Belichick, we don't have him going 21 anymore. Well, first off, they bring in Mac Wilson in a trade. They re-sign Juwan Bentley, which take that how you want, but at the end of the day, Dean is extremely high character. He's a leader. He's everything you could look for in a linebacker except for size. Um, but he sat out of the combine, and then really he didn't do anything special in the pro day. So he's probably falling maybe even in the second round like we have it. I've seen a couple mocks where Detroit takes him at 32, and although it could make sense, if you want the offense to run, you just got to get golf weapons and figure out the defensive piece. This is a defensive heavy draft. The offensive side, the receiver room receiver class is crazy. The quarterback class is not. The running back class is not. The tight ends class is not. And I really don't know yet how deep the offensive line class is. So you might as well get your offensive pieces while you can.
Well, that's all we have for now. Again, see our full breakdown of our mock on the website, and just keep an eye out for our continued prospect profiles and grades of free agency and trades and everything like that. And we look forward as the draft approaches.